Black privilege not to be offended is increasingly being supplemented by a Black demand to be honored in all realms, regardless of accomplishments. So you have mediocre Black composers, scientists, and writers from the past who are showered with praise, while, genuinely great men who in hindsight just had the misfortune of being white are being canceled.
This is one of the dumbest, hey, look at me, I'm white videos I've ever seen, because the reality is that people who make great contributions to humanity typically get remembered for it. And people who are white throughout history who have made great contributions are not getting canceled. Isaac Newton is one of the most brilliant people who has ever existed. He was white. Albert Einstein, white. People like Christopher Columbus, they get canceled, but not really. You know what I'm saying? Like, just because you maybe have a bunch of lefties who are like, you know, screw this guy. Christopher Columbus was kind of, doesn't mean that, you know, all the people on your side are forgetting about him or canceling him. But again, people throughout history who make great contributions, whether they're Black, white, Chinese, Latino, whatever it is, they get remembered for it because they push humanity forward. And also, you know, not acting like, you know, white Europeans who went around the world conquering and colonizing everything didn't take credit for things that they didn't do. So it's really just a lot of projection going on because who's stolen more history?
If he were not Black, no one in America today would know who George Washington Carver is. History is constantly being rewritten to magnify beyond all reasonable proportions the contributions of Black Americans. I mean,
if he just wants to make blank generalizations, then the generalization I'm about to make is much more true in terms of white people stealing everybody's history, you know, going to this country and saying, we created this, we built that, we made that. That's a lot more in line with reality than what he's talking about. A minority group in America, oh, you know, they just get all this credit for things that they didn't actually do. Because he's just a racist douchebag and he's not as smart as he thinks he is. I mean, that's all this is. These guys who go around parading like they're super intellectual, they just take these tiny little examples and they magnify them and then they end up somewhere way where reality is not. So it's like, dude, shut up.
The example that I find most amusing is Hollywood a few years ago made a movie called Hidden Figures, about the role of low-level Black female mathematicians in putting a man on the moon.
60s, when Black people were starting to inch their way into professional sports, and the white guys just like that were like, oh, we can't let these monkeys into the court. And then Black people started whooping y'all ass and everything, started jumping higher, running faster, doing everything smoother, having everything with more game, whether it be the style and clothing that we do, bringing to the streets, the culture. You look all around the world, everybody's looking just like what Black people did here in the 90s and in the 2000s, even in the Latino cultures. Bad Bunny, all of them people is just a retelling of what Black people did here in the 90s and the 2000s, and that's reality. So while this guy's going around acting like, oh, you know, white people don't get their due. Again, ain't nobody who's ever contributed anything major to society who was white, they're not getting canceled. None of them. Why? Because they contributed greatly to society. Whether they're white, Black, Chinese, Latino, it doesn't matter. But somebody like you don't contribute greatly to society. And I think you're mad that you just look left and right and you see all these people with darker skin tones than you doing better than you and having their way when you are just missing out on your good old white entitlement.